So the paradise flycatcher is an incredibly beautiful bird. I mean, from the moment I first saw it, I fell in love with it. And for me, when I was writing a book, I've started this series of feather tales, which is basically about birds. And I knew, one of the birds I really wanted to portray in the stories was the paradise flycatcher. And so I came up with a story which kind of presents a paradise flycatcher. And I've been very lucky that this entire series, this feather tale series, is being supported by Puffin. This is the only fully 4-color book they're doing, and they allow as many illustrations as I want in the book, and I have full control over the illustrations, the type, the quality, and the whole idea is for kids to, when they read the book, when you talk about a bird, you can write as much as you want, but when it's visually there, that goes into their minds. And I'm hoping that these books eventually they'll connect through the picturization of the birds and the bird characters with actually the birds outside. And that's the idea, to make them familiar with birds. And the paradise flycatcher, being such a lovely bird, is, that's why I wrote this book, just to introduce kids to this lovely bird. As I said, this series has been brewing in my mind for a long, long time, ever since I fell in love with birds. And I grew up as a city child, and the only birds I knew were kites, crows, sparrows, pigeons, what you find in cities. But when I actually became a bird watcher, I went out and I saw these amazing birds, and I realized what I'd missed all along in life. There is so much just outside your window. You don't even know what a magpie robin is. You don't know. These are the birds you find in your garden. You find quails, you find drongos, but you just see them as a very pretty bird. But the point is, there's far more to it than that. In India, we have 1,200 species of birds, and worldwide more than 10,000. And it's amazing the bird life we have, from pelicans to orioles to hornbills to storks to cranes. I could go on. There's these amazing birds which we have, but we know nothing about them. I'm just, yeah, pretty bird. Oh, look at that bluebird. Look at that. So this whole entire series had, when I conceptualized it, it had to have great images, because you can write as much as you want, as I spoke earlier, but you got to see it to identify the bird. And so luckily Puffin and accepted this idea, and so we do these books with as many illustrations as we want. And here the whole idea is to connect kids with birds, and hopefully one day become bird watchers. Well, essentially, this is follow the format of any book, where you have a strong plot. That's the most important thing. You have to create this sense of anticipation mixed with a lot of uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen, but you still want to turn the pages. That's basically what a good plot is about. So this is the center of any kind of story I write. But the difference here is that birds are the characters. So that's where you bring in the nature angle. You mix the nature angle into a story, so you can get all that through one. So that's the reason I chose these kind of birds as characters. And it's essentially comes down to plain and simple storytelling, but just the characters are birds. Gosh, they're everything. These books would be nothing without great illustrations. In fact, though I conceptualized this series a long time back, they were held up. This whole series was held up simply because I couldn't find a good illustrator. In the old days, when I used to approach illustrators, they wouldn't even read the manuscript. It was hard to find somebody who would read the manuscript. And then finally I found this young girl from Calcutta. She did a wonderful job. I mean, she was the first one who actually read the books, and she actually came up with really good illustrations, sorry to say. But then she quit, and I was like bereft. And then I got Krishna, who is now the current illustrator. He's done this wonderful image of this paradise flycatcher. Look at this, of this fountain. It's beautifully done. And then look at this with the hornbills. This young man actually sits and reads the book backwards. He knows everything. And I don't have to tell him what to illustrate. In the earlier cases, I had to tell what to illustrate. Krishna and me, we work so brilliantly together. In fact, Before we started on this work, he actually came down to Pune. He stayed at my home for about a week. We got to know each other, and that built a kind of, he knew what I wanted, I knew what he had to give. We formed this friendship, and now I think it's just working perfectly. They're so important, actually, this whole, because how do you connect with birds? You have to have the image in front of you, and also there's got to be something magical about it. And I think Krishna gives that magic, which makes you want to look at the image a second time, a third time. I'm so happy that I got Krishna, and it works very well for both of us. I believe fiction is the greatest way of getting across anything you want to, because a good story absorbs the child completely. And once you have them, you can bring in history, you can bring in natural history, you can bring in whatever you want to, because the child is into the story. I use this medium for getting natural history, birds, the love of nature, landscapes, travel. This is what I use for my books, but I set them in different places. My earlier series, the Vikramaditya series, were set in the Lakshadweep Islands, where I try and entrance them with the beauty of those islands, the coral reefs. I've set a few books in the Himalayas, I've set a few books in the Andaman Islands, in the forest. But essentially it's the story. Once you have fiction which really absorbs them, you actually can feed them what you want. You bury it in the story. You should never talk down to children that you got to save this, you got to do this. It has to come in subtly. And fiction allows you to do that. And I enjoy, actually, for me, a book has to convey something. And it must be conveyed in a way that the child doesn't feel that he's been talked down to. If it comes naturally through the story, they remember it forever. And I think it's a wonderful medium for conveying anything you like. Truth is, I believe they just enjoy the story. Good stories, that's really what I'm trying to do, and they love it for just the story. Of course, the illustrations make a big difference. That's the additional thing with these books. They actually love the illustrations. They come back to me and point out, I love this, I love that, or you could have done it this way, you could have done it that way. There's so many inputs that you get from them. But at the end of the day, why do children read? They read for a good story, and that's what it is. They get absorbed, they come into it. Of course, they learn a few other things, etc., but that's by the by. If you ask me what children get most out of it, it's a good, absorbing, wonderful way. That's what I wrote it for. Sure. Actually, there's a big gain in this if you read these books. The reason I put birds as the entire, made birds the characters, is the whole idea is to involve parents, teachers, and kids all equally with nature. Birds are a great introduction to nature. My real hope in this is that you do associate with the characters of these books. You want to know more about them. You go and look in the trees around you. Probably you start taking. I'm not talking just children, but even parents and teachers. You start paying attention to the trees outside. Looking out for birds. Then you might want to take further trips outside, specifically searching for birds. And that's what the whole idea is, to draw you into nature through bird watching, introduce you to bird watching, but from that, extend the experience into taking to wilderness areas, enjoying the wilderness, and the great beauty of birds and animals and nature. It really is a prep for taking you into nature, connecting you with nature. The whole entire series is to connect kids, along with them their parents, because parents too really know so little about birds. And I have to say the same thing about teachers too. Get that great connect with nature, and bird watching is a wonderful way to draw you out. So I really think that's what this is all about, the connect with nature through birds.